Dr. Terry Shintani, Director of Preventive Medicine at Shintani.
I want to thank everyone for sharing their evening with me and with the Vegetarian Society. I do these talks because long ago I began to realize that our healthcare system was broken. How many of you would agree our health system is broken? Great. So I started a foundation that tried to approach health a different way rather than just giving people a bunch of medication, and if the medicine didn't work, they'd do surgery. I thought that a whole person approach, including spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical, would be a better approach. How many would agree with that? Well, so in order to acknowledge that all of these, you see, this is my Peace Diet, the cover of my Peace Diet book. You can see I'm an old hippie. I put a peace sign in the middle, but it actually works perfectly. But I believe that it's not just diet, but physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. That's important. How many would agree with that? So if you agree, then you won't mind me starting with a prayer to acknowledge the spiritual part. Ikamako mako okalani mahalone mako iapoe noko malama ya ene kamako lakino e ho mahala mai kamako halavai meka na au mai kalani ameka ho opu mai kai. Our most gracious Heavenly Father, Creator of all of us, blessed be thy name. We thank you for all of your blessings and for looking after our health. And humbly, we ask your blessing on this gathering. We ask that you bless each and every person here. We ask you bless the Vegetarian Society, who spreads thy word of health and of mercy and of protection of all the creatures of your earth. And we ask that you allow us to learn of the glory of thy healing and allow us to be better servants to thee. Those things we pray. No kamea, no kealpuni mekamana, mekaho'unani ya amaloa atu. Amen and amen. And thank you for allowing me to do that. Appreciate it. Well, I started with a spiritual exercise, partly because this is the first time that my book emphasizes a little bit more the spiritual side of things. And I guess I'm just getting old and realize that I have to get all of my messages out before my time runs out on earth. So that is the Peace Diet. And I'll get into more details in a little while. But I wanted to play a short video so the folks who have never heard me speak or don't know of the work that I've done. This is a short video of my program on national TV.
I just kept on eating and eating, and I was never hungry. I've never felt deprived.
I eat a lot of food.
My original weight loss was 45 pounds.
37 pounds so far.
I've lost 52 pounds.
I've lost 56 pounds, and I've kept it off for 7 years.
The Dalai Lama says we have bigger houses, smaller families, more conveniences, but less time, more knowledge, but less judgment, more experts, but still more problems. And here's the interesting one, more medicine, but less health. How many would agree with that? Isn't that amazing how true this is today? How true. Because think about it, isn't it funny how our world is? We have all these conveniences, laptop computers, smartphones. We don't even need to go to the phone booth anymore, right? Remember those things? We have cars that take us everywhere and so forth. And yet we still have less time. How many people feel like they have more time than before? You see, nobody's hands go up. But here's the interesting one. more medicine, but less health. Isn't that amazing? That's the problem we're having in this country. You see, we have an epidemic of nutrition-related diseases. Here's the top 10 causes of death: heart disease, cancer, stroke, diabetes, Alzheimer's, kidney disease. All the red ones are nutrition-related problems. 6 of the 10 leading causes of death. If you add it up, nearly 70% of us die of a nutrition-related disease. If 70% of us die of a nutrition-related problem, don't you think 70% of the resources ought to go into nutrition-related disease? Right? Into nutrition, right? Do you know how much goes into nutrition services from the health system? Practically zero. You'd think that 70% of the doctors would be nutrition doctors, right? Do you know how many doctors in Hawaii have a nutrition degree? I think there's only one, and you're seeing it. You're watching him right now. But what's even more concerning is a new 4th leading cause of death has sneaked in. Do you know what the new 4th leading cause of death is? It surprised everyone because it isn't a disease. It's a cause of death, but not a disease. Anybody guess? The startling 4th leading cause of death, shockingly, is medicine itself. And if you think I'm making this up, this was published in the Journal of the American Medical Association. It's not my data, it's collected and published in the Journal of the American Medical Association. Prescription medicine, not abused drugs now, prescription medicines, what they call ADRs, adverse drug reactions, cause enough deaths to rate as the number 4 cause of death. Now, let's think about this logic, what's kind of a little bit messed up. And I'm being facetious here. I'm not telling anybody to stop their medicine. But does it make a whole lot of sense that if you have the 6th leading cause of death, diabetes, that you would want to take the 4th leading cause of death to deal with it? How many would of you would want to trade the 6th leading cause of death for the 4th? Do you see how crazy it's getting? I mean, I'm not, I know that it doesn't work that way, but the point is that at some point, for some people, the treatment is now getting worse than the disease, right? How many agree with that? Right? You know, I mean, the statistics are not lying. So we need to have a different approach. So why are we getting fat and sick? Well, our diet has changed dramatically. We used to eat a diet mostly whole, unprocessed carbohydrates, not much fat, sugar, or refined flour, not much animal products. Today we eat a record amount of fat, sugar, white flour. Less than 10% of our food comes from whole, unprocessed, plant-based sources, which is really the source of good health. And Hawaiians used to eat taro in the old days, right? How many of you have heard that carbs make you fat? Right? So if carbs made you fat, shouldn't Hawaiians who are quite overweight today, shouldn't they be even more overweight in the past because they ate more carbs, right? Hawaiians actually were very slim in the old days. They were slim in the old days. So a lot of people think it's all in the genes. But when you look at the Hawaiians, they're all slim in the old days. So what's the difference? Why do they have a high rate of obesity now? I worked in Waianae for many years. Some of my patients were 600-700 pounds. I've had patients as high as in the 800s. And so you might think it's just genetic, but look at the pictures. And if you don't like drawings, these are photographs from the 1800s. Hawaiians still slim in the 1800s. So if carbs made you fat, you have to ask yourself, why were they slim in these days? And I'll explain to you. Do you see, what happened was, we used to eat natural whole food, whole plant-based foods in the old days. What's the staple food for Hawaii today? French fries. Who said Spam? Oh, he's absolutely right. You know why I put this up here, right? Spam is like the quintessential local food, right? Unfortunately. But the point here is that people think of Spam as a meat product, right? Right? So it's protein, right? How many of you knew it's only 17% protein? Do you know what the rest of the 83% is? Oh my God. No wonder we're getting fat. And by the way, it's not just Spam. Hot dogs are about 83% fat. Hamburgers are about 70% fat. Cheese, 74% fat. So you say, well, I eat chicken. Okay, chicken thigh is still 57% fat. It's still more than half fat. People are afflicted with lifestyle-related diseases like obesity, heart disease, hypertension, diabetes, all of these, asthma, allergy, irritable bowel, gastritis, sleep, fatigue. Do you know that in my health programs, I put people on my diet program, the peace diet, you might want to call it, and all of these resolve. Do you know why they resolve? At least for some of them. Do you know why they start to resolve in my program? Because the cause of the disease was a bad and you have a headache. What's the first treatment? Is it a good diet to get rid of the source? No, they give you a pill. When you have diabetes and you go to the doctor, do they put you on a diet or a pill? They put you on a pill. Same thing with hypertension. Put you on a pill. You know, if they don't change your diet, at least if they don't change it seriously, you never get rid of the problem. Right? You never get rid of the problem. You see, this is one of the reasons why I got into what I'm doing today. All right? I got into this because I started out, I'm a fourth year, I'm a professor of medicine at the medical school. I teach fourth year students. This is my history. I went into, as many of you know, I was a lawyer first, and I got fed up with the way law was practiced. So I went into medicine, and you know what? I got fed up with the way medicine was practiced. It was tough, after spending all those years in school and still being fed up. And the reason I was fed up with medicine was I quit law because I didn't want to fight people, I wanted to heal them. How many of you think that's a good idea? And how many of you think that doctors should learn how to heal people? Well, isn't that a stupid question, right? But this is my experience in the fourth year of medical school. I'm sitting there with a preceptor who's trying to teach me how to treat a patient with hypertension, diabetes, and cholesterol. And he says, okay, we're going to give him this medicine for the blood pressure, this medicine for the diabetes, this medicine for the cholesterol, He leaves the room so that I can finish up and learn how to counsel the patient. And I tell the patient, okay, take this in the morning, this one with food, and you know how the routine goes, right? And he asks me a really fair question. He says, Doc, can I ask you a question? I said, sure. He goes, when will these medicines cure me? How many of you think that's a very fair question? Do you know what my answer was? Never. So if my answer is never, never curing that patient, did I learn how to heal that patient? 4 years of medical school, and I still didn't know how to heal this patient. I thought, oh my gosh. I spent all this time and I didn't learn what I came here to learn. That's why I went to get a nutrition degree after medical school, so I wouldn't feel so lousy about that. So that's how I got to where I got. You see, if you put people on a good diet, virtually all of these will start to disappear. And if you need medicine, well, at least it'll minimize that. Well, this is the government's approach. Fruit, vegetable, grain, protein, dairy. They actually recommend about 30% fat. Do you know that they did a study and they showed that a 30% fat diet will actually promote heart disease? Why would they keep promoting a diet like this, right? And here's the other issue with this approach. By the way, the food guide pyramid is gone, as you might know. They use this now. You notice, do you see a problem with this? Vegetable, that's a food, right? Fruit, that's a food. Grains, that's a food. Protein, is that a food? It doesn't even make sense. Because protein, well, what kind of protein? Because you see, there's protein in vegetables, there's protein in grains, there's actually a little bit of protein in fruit. So which is it? So I never liked this approach because number one, it wasn't parallel, and number two, it didn't quite make sense. And anyway, people eat this way and they still have 6 of the 10 leading causes of death being related to bad diet. So I came up with this approach, okay? Grain, vegetable, less fruit because you can actually get too much sugar from if you eat too much fruit. Beans, but a little bit less because you can actually get too much protein from beans, believe it or not. But they all have fiber, they all have anti-cancer nutrients, they all have anti-inflammatory, all have antioxidants. Wonderful combination of food. But is food ever the whole answer? No. That's why I lined it with 8 enhancements: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. And these are external exposures, and I'll explain that. I call it reverse obesity, aging, and disease by eating for peace of body, mind, and spirit. And this is the first time I included peace of mind because you see, and spirit, because you see, I always thought that if you look at body, mind, and spirit, if your spirit isn't totally healthy, are you ever completely healthy? No. So I wanted to include that. So I write about that in this book. And I've been very, very fortunate. Look who wrote my foreword. How many of you heard of Dr. T. Colin Campbell? Well, he was here last year sometime. And he's very kind to me. I used to lecture for him at Cornell University, and he wrote my foreword. So you can read what he says about me. Actually, he says, I find Dr. Shintani's work impressive and based on excellent scientific principles. I also have a quote out of Newsweek. It's almost embarrassing. Newsweek said the results are miraculous. So I have some very good endorsements on this book. This is my whole person approach that I use in the book. You can see this yin-yang symbol. This is the internal, where I have physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. That's 4 of the 8. And the external, earth, air, fire, and water. These are your exposures. For example, fire represents energy. Energy means, you know, you expose to sunlight, right? That affects your health. How does it affect your health? Well, vitamin D, right? You get sunlight, you get vitamin D. If you get too much sunlight, you get cancer. So you want to make sure you get the right amount of these things. And of course, you need clean air, clean water, and unpolluted environment. Yeah, this is the internal, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, external, earth, air, fire, and water. I also have in my book listed people of great wisdom throughout the ages who advocate a plant-based diet as the best way to go. Plato, the God created certain kinds of beings to replenish our bodies, trees, plants, and seeds. By the way, it's like quoting the Bible, right? The Bible, Genesis 1:29, I give to you as food every tree bearing fruit and every herb bearing seed. Didn't say anything about eating animals, at least not the original diet in Genesis. How many of you knew Ben Franklin was vegetarian? How many of you did not know that? Yeah, I didn't know that until I started researching this. He says, my refusing to eat meat occasioned inconveniency. I have been frequently chided for my singularity. My light repast allows for greater progress, for greater clearness of head and quicker comprehension. Now he's saying it affects his mind, which is what I also talk about that in this book. I have a chapter called The Physiology of Peace, how diet actually affects your peacefulness. Some basic lessons: eat for peace of body and mind. You literally become what you eat. Diet affects mind and body. Diet affects spirit, and everything is connected. So, I call this part How to Make Peace with Your Appetite. I talk about how to lose weight in this book. How many of you want to learn how to control cholesterol with the diet? How many want to learn how to control blood pressure with a diet? How about blood sugar? How many of you just want to eat twice as much food and still lose weight? Those of you who have seen my talks probably seen this before, but this is for the benefit of everyone. You see, we now eat lots and lots of fat, sugar, fine flour, etc. This is poi, brown rice, sugar, and fat, all right? What is similar about the food in the jars? Fat? This is all fat. This is no fat. Same number of calories. 200, 200, 200. Uh-oh, 200. Did it ever occur to you how small the food gets when you process it down in its chemical form? Let me show you what this means in terms of real food. Here's a burger, fries, and a drink. Here's a plate of real food. How many of you could eat that in one sitting? And I'm saying not if you would, I'm saying if you could. Right? You could, right? Well, imagine it's a veggie burger, okay? How many of you could eat that in one sitting? That should be everybody. It's a standard American diet, right? How many of you would still be hungry after eating that? A lot of you still would be. How many of you could eat this entire plate of food in one sitting? I usually have one or two wise guys, but you see, this is about 4 pounds of food. Very hard to eat that much, wouldn't you agree? So what is similar about these 2 plates of food? Same calories. Very good. This is a smart group. But if you said same calories, you would be wrong. This is fewer calories. 1,100 compared to almost 1,200. But remember I said I'd show you how to eat twice as much and still lose weight? I lied. This is 3 times as much. It's 1,800 grams versus 600, you see. But you see the idea about eating whole, unprocessed, plant-based food. This is an apple. How many of you could eat 2 apples if you're hungry? This is a muffin the same size. How many of you could eat 2 muffins if you're hungry? 90 calories. How many calories in the muffin? 300. Do I have 350? 350. Do I have 400? 400. 500. It's 550 calories. Everybody got outbid in this auction. And if you think I'm making this up, I took it right off the label. All right? The point is that when you eat processed food full of sugar, white flour, and fat, shortening, you concentrate the calories, but your stomach stays empty. How many apples will it take to meet that number of calories, to equal that number of calories? 6. This is a sharp group. 90 times 6, 540, right? Those of you who could eat 2 muffins, how many of you can eat 12 apples? No hands go up. You see, this is part of the lesson of the peace diet. When you eat whole, unprocessed, plant-based food, there is no way to get fat. How do I know? Well, try getting fat eating apples. Your stomach isn't big enough, okay? And I actually show people how to choose foods that will help them in that regard. Also, fat percent makes a difference. A lot of people think fat makes you satisfied, so it doesn't make you fat. Well, this should kind of end that debate. These are mice. The higher the fat in mice, the more mice become obese. It's just very, very simple. This gentleman lost 150 pounds. Took me about a year to get him that way and got him off all his insulin. I got him off of all but 2 medications. He was actually very disciplined. This lady lost nearly half her weight over a 2-year period. But what's interesting is, remember I told you we talk about lowering cholesterol? Watch what her cholesterol turns out to be.
When I started the program, I weighed 243 pounds. Currently, I weigh about 128. I'm kind of going in between the 125 and the 130. The other thing, too, the other day I think now my outside matches my inside. You know, now I look like how I feel on the inside. And that was kind of neat.
So,
yeah, my cholesterol used to be 223. Now, almost 2 years later on the program, it's 131.
Not only was her weight loss sustainable, but her cholesterol came down naturally. I have a 10-day program, which I'll talk about at the end, which we're starting up next month. It's not for everybody because there's a fee for that. But in a 10-day program, some people lower their cholesterol by 30, 40, 50, 60 points. If you can lower your cholesterol 50 points, 40 or 50 points in 10 days, why would you want to take a statin drug? Do you know how many of you know somebody on a cholesterol-lowering statin drug? That's like mostly everybody, right? Do you know what the side effects of statins are? Liver damage, muscle damage, and memory loss. How many of you want memory loss? So I recommend people try to lower their cholesterol naturally. Some people say inflammation is the key to all chronic disease. How many of you have heard that? Well, the peace diet helps you make peace with inflammation and chronic pain. When people go on my 10-day program, they notice their aches and pains are less, and they can use less pain medicine. What a concept, diet affecting your pain. Well, I do it all the time. Why? Because there are triggering factors, which many of our diet related, and people forget there are promoting factors like prostaglandins. Why is prostaglandin important? Because you see, this is a complicated slide, but you see, prostaglandins are what cause pain and inflammation. Prostaglandins are little microhormones that control the process. And aspirin works by blocking this enzyme so you don't produce all these prostaglandins. But what's the problem with aspirin? Give me one side effect of aspirin. What's that? Liver problems. What else? Ulcers. What else? Kidney disease. Destroys your kidneys. Destroys your hearing. It's an anticoagulant. You can start bleeding too much, okay? Not a benign drug, all right? What if you could get the effect of aspirin without taking aspirin? How many would like that? I would. All you have to do is reduce arachidonic acid, that's an omega-6, and linoleic acid. Those are the 2 upstream products that produce prostaglandins. Do you know what provides the most arachidonic acid? Chicken. And a lot of people are eating chicken because they think it's healthy, and it's actually probably worse for inflammation. But if you see here, chicken, eggs, beef, sausage, fish, burgers, cold cuts, pork, you don't get to, the top 11 sources of arachidonic acid are animal products. So you see, if you want to reduce pain, you got to eliminate or reduce these things. Also, the blue represents linoleic acid. That's the one up here. And you get that from vegetable oils like corn oil and safflower oil and sunflower oil. So insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. If you don't change your diet, you're going to get the same results. So in our 10-day program, we put people back on this type of diet. We put people on the peace diet. And we make peace with your blood sugar. We reduce the amount of saturated fat that blocks your insulin receptors. That helps your insulin work better. By the way, insulin resistance is the key to type 2 diabetes. And despite the fact that we're on a high carb diet, the peace diet is a high carb diet. I make no bones about it. But you notice how places like Japan, they have a high carb diet and they have less diabetes. In Hawaii, they eat less carbs. They triple the rate of diabetes. In Washington, less carb, quadruple the rate of diabetes. What's happening is we reduce the amount of saturated fat, for one, so that the insulin works better. Also, we make sure that people eat low glycemic foods, and we teach you how to choose foods that are lower in glycemic effect. And I talk about this in my chapter on blood sugar. And the bottom line is, how many of you have heard you should eat more complex carbs? Okay. Okay, so I'm going to eat white bread. It's a complex carb. Instead of apples, which is a simple carb. Is that a good idea? Well, the glycemic number for apple is 51. The glycemic number for this complex carb is 100. Is that a good idea? So what do they tell you? Well, you should be eating whole wheat, right? Whole wheat bread is 99. It's almost the same. How many of you knew that? Virtually nobody. You see, they're not teaching nutrition properly. Whole wheat bread, glycemic number is higher than even table sugar. Oh my gosh. You see, if you divide it this way, complex versus simple, you have no idea, because you have low numbers and high numbers. You have low numbers and high numbers. What they should be doing is dividing it this way. Processed versus unprocessed. Doesn't matter whether it's complex or simple. If it's processed, it turns out bad. If it's unprocessed, it comes out pretty good. That's how they should be teaching it, but they're not. I have graphs on how oranges turned into orange juice turns out to be a bad idea.
As a nation, we're addicted to drugs, and I mean prescription drugs. And I mean, it's like how damaging being addicted to a narcotic is to an individual. This nation being addicted to prescription drugs is wrecking the nation.
Depo-Provera, Lipitor, and Metformin.
Vicodin.
I eat Tums like Topaz. 1,800 milligrams of Motrin.
Avalon.
I ask for alternatives to pills, and every time I go in, I get another pill. Plavix.
Captopril.
I'm gonna have to be taking it forever. My doctor said I'm pre-diabetic. So I would get migraines every single day. I have a lot of lower back pain. I had night sweats.
Extreme urinary frequency.
Immediate family, I'm the only one alive. There's got to be something better than this.
I have diabetes and all those things that kill Hawaiians. I believe it's going to be my last effort here.
There are many people taking a lot of medicines that they could get rid of if they were following a good diet and lifestyle the way we recommend. Some people said, "Boy, your diet is dangerous." The diet makes people well so fast that their medication becomes dangerous.
88.
Oh, ouch.
That's on the
Yeah, skip it.
That, okay.
Yeah. Actually, you should probably skip it.
Skip it?
Okay?
I'm so surprised. I can't believe it.
Being that it's on the low side of normal, you probably don't need your diabetes medicine.
I'm so excited.
Oh, why are you excited?
Pounds.
Oh.
I lost 14.
I've already lost 11 pounds.
So that means you've lost over
17 pounds.
your blood sugar is borderline, you know. Well, actually slightly high, 107. Yeah. Now it's 90.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, but I had such a problem with reflux. Practically from the first day, it's been better. I have an unopened box of Prilosec.
Cholesterol was 228.
Mm-hmm.
And after 21 days, it's 141.
Wow. Wow. Yes.
Joint pain?
Oh, ankle, knees, hips.
Okay, and so?
And since I've been off the dairy and off the meat products, nothing.
Your headaches?
Yeah, they're gone.
Okay.
I don't have any more headaches.
Well, the next question I get, and this is a question a lot of vegetarians get. How many vegetarians get asked, well, where do you get your protein? See, virtually all the hands go up. My daughter, who's vegetarian, she says, Dad, do you realize that when you become a vegetarian, every meat eater becomes a nutritionist? Because they think they know better about protein, you know? So you're not getting enough protein. Here's protein. You know what I say when people say, what about protein? Or when I see this table? Oh, this is my thing. I say, what kind of protein? Here's a protein and amino acid table. Here's rice. You see all the protein and all the amino acids? Here's corn, protein, all the amino acids. Rice, protein, all. That's even white rice has got protein. How about potato? How about turnips? How about kale? So which protein are they talking about here? Do you see the problem? You see the problem here? So then they say, well, but you have to eat meat to build muscle. How many of you heard that? And I said, why would that be true? Would you eat brain to get smarter? Right? Would you? I wouldn't. And the thing is, this is what people's got to realize. And I put this up here. I made this graphic for people who are vegetarians, so they know what to say. Because you see, vegetarian animals always have had bigger muscles than meat eaters. What do I mean? Well, which one is vegetarian? The elephant. Which one has bigger muscles? The elephant. It ain't the lion, right? And you know what? This has been true for more than 150 million years. It's always been that way. So how come, if it's been true for 150 million years, suddenly it's going to be different now? Right? Do you see what I'm trying to say? So I have this in my book. I finally put this in my book. So how many of you have heard, but gluten is a protein that's bad for you? How many heard that? You know gluten sensitivity? You know? Do you know that that's probably bogus? And you're going, whoa, wait a minute. You see, they say that, a lot of people say that, well, gluten causes this problem and that problem because the gliadins cause leaky gut syndrome, causes the gaps to open up, and all kinds of theories. And when you take people off gluten, the blood sugar gets better, and you know, all these improve. I was sitting there listening to the guy who wrote The Wheat Belly, I think. And I'm sitting there and I'm saying, well, wait a minute. I feed my patients gluten in the form of seitan, which is Japanese wheat gluten. Nobody has a problem with it. And you know what? Their sugar still comes down, their pressure still comes down, their cholesterol still goes down, their aches and pains still disappear, their ulcerative colitis still goes away. What's going on here? And I have always said that most of the problem comes from the processed carbohydrates. And you know what? That was similar to the conclusion of this, because what they did here was, this is a study in 2013 showing where they put 3 groups, placebo, low gluten, high gluten capsules. Now they took away all the carbs. And you know what? They really couldn't tell the difference, but the people who had the fewest symptoms were the high gluten people. But do you see the problem with the idea of gluten? I'm not saying wheat is not a problem. Now wheat may be a problem because the processed carbs, there are also some carbs in it that aren't digested properly, might change the gut flora, but it's not the gluten, according to this study, okay? There's also a chapter called The Anatomy of Peace, just a short chapter on why anatomically we should be eating plant-based foods, predominantly. You know, like these animals, well, when you look at the anatomy, I have this diagram in my book. If you look at the ratio of torso to intestine length, this is a lion, meat eater. This is a bear, omnivore, right? This is a human, this is a cow. Which animal is human the closest to? Meat eater, omnivore, or herbivore? You can make the conclusion yourself, right? Much closer to the ratio of an herbivore. The ratio is up here. You know. I'll entertain questions at the end. I also have a chapter called The Physiology of Peace. I don't have time to talk a lot about it, but how diet affects the mind through capillary sludging, hormone imbalance, neurotransmitters, and blood sugar ups and downs. That affects your peacefulness, your mind. And people should realize that diet can change your hormone levels, which of course affects your mood. So how do we get your health back in 10 days? Well, I have a health program, and you can ask about it at the end, where I put people on this type of diet. There is a fee for this. This is not for everyone. Watch gastroesophageal reflux disease, headaches, arthritis, fatigue, prediabetes, hypertension start to disappear. Right, so, thank you. So don't you think that's the way medicine ought to be practiced? When you see the doctor, he prescribes an approach, and then he starts taking you off your medicine, right? Wouldn't that be better than you go to the doctor and then he just gives you some more? Eat right, exercise, positive attitude, all of these things are important. This is the peace diet approach. Diet in the middle, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. And of course your environmental exposures, and share. So the point of this is the final point that I'll make, and then I'll answer questions. But you see, we aren't all alone, right? We live in a society, we communicate with each other. And part of the reason we're all eating a bad diet, because everybody's eating a bad diet, right, around us, and it's just hard to stick with it when somebody next to you is eating, you know, burgers and fries and chips and stuff like that. So what I'm trying to do is help the vegetarian society create a healthy community. You start to learn it yourself, and then you share it, just like you did. Because think about it. If I talk to you in my doctor's office one-on-one, In the time that it took to do the lomi lomi, how many other people would have gotten lomi lomi from me? 2, right? This way, how many people got it? The whole room got it. Hundreds of people got it, right? So the only way we're really going to make a change, he says, I can't do it myself. Dr. Harris can't do it himself. Lorraine can't do it herself. What we need to do is learn, do it ourselves, and share it with our friends and family. In that way, we have the possibility.
I was in the same group with Kathy, and I was taking about 100 units of insulin, and I was giving myself a shot 5 times a day, and I no longer take that. I was taking Lipitor, and I no longer take that. My cholesterol is good, and I am only on metformin, and Dr. Shintani is going to cut me back on my dosage as my A1C goes down. So I have a lot to look forward to, and I agree with Kathy that it's worth the money. This program is fantastic, and I tell everybody about it.
Milk for calcium, you know, I studied nutrition at Harvard, and one of our greatest nutritionists was a fellow named Mark Hegstead in the 1970s, tried to point out to Congress that milk actually didn't really prevent osteoporosis. And that data was confirmed over the years, including studies by one of my teachers, Dr. Walter Willett, who's current chair of nutrition at Harvard. The truth is, there isn't any substantial evidence that dairy will prevent osteoporosis. It's just been, how do I put it? They're mainly trying to promote the dairy industry when they say that. Dairy also carries standard whole milk is 55% fat, 2% milk is 35% fat. It's mostly saturated fat. There's evidence that it actually increases obesity, including in children, including the low-fat varieties. There are lots of things that are not the greatest about dairy. So I consider dairy what I would call party food. You do it once in a while at a party, but it's not meant for daily food. If you want calcium, you get it from greens and seaweed. And if you think about it, where did the cow get calcium? It's not drinking milk. Right? It's eating vegetables. Question? In the back, yes. Questions? What do I use for fat or fat substitute? First of all, the question is, what do I use for fat or fat substitute? What you have to understand is fat, like granulated sugar, is a processed food. So it has effects on the body that the body was never intended to experience. So, but if you're going to use oil, then I recommend extra virgin olive, but you have to limit the amount. I prefer to get fats and oils from whole food, like olives, some nuts, some avocado. There's some fat in soybeans now I'm talking about. Even tofu does. But I try to limit the amount of added oils. Yes?
How does your diet affect taking vitamin supplements?
Vitamin supplements? It depends. I mean, if you, some vitamin supplements should be taken apart from eating vegetables, just because the fiber will actually slow down some of the absorption of vitamins. Yes?
Do you have any thoughts on genetically modified organic? Because even your diet foods are being modified by Monsanto foods, the animals being modified genetically?
Well, that's the subject of an entire discussion, genetically modified foods. The American Academy of Environmental Medicine has called for a ban on GMO food until long-term testing has been done. It's never been done. We're almost like the early days of tobacco, when they said it doesn't cause lung cancer, but there were no long-term studies. So what they really need to do is long-term studies to show the safety. When people ask about science, they're asking the wrong question. They say, where's the science that it causes harm? Well, the science that causes harm is found in animals. It shows that animals are harmed by GMO foods. What they should be asking is, where's the science that it doesn't harm humans? And they don't have that. They don't have any long-term studies. And I remember talking to somebody, I said, well, those are just animal studies. And I said, let me ask you a question. If a canary dies in the mine shaft, are you going to go in the mine shaft? Right? Just because it's a canary doesn't mean it's not going to kill a human. All right, I think I have to wrap up, but I'm going to close with a short prayer, and then I'll be in the back answering questions and signing books. All right? E pulikako, let us pray, everyone. Maka inoa no o kamakua me ke keiki, me ka uhane hamalele. E ho o mai kai mako me ka mahalo. No ke ia ho o ku'u ana. Ho i mako I ka mako hale. Ho o ka awale nā mea mai kai ole. Ho o pu mai kai mau mako o la kinu. Me ka na au mai kalani. Ahui ho ai. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate it.